and go for it.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Sharon Florentine. Welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, Best Practices, Scaling Observability for Modern Applications, brought to you by Logs.io. We have an awesome webinar for you today, as usual, but before we get started, I need to go through some housekeeping items with you. First, please remember that the session is being recorded, so you'll be able to access any or all of it if you happen to miss something. We'll be sending an email with instructions for how to access the webinar on demand, or you can visit us at devops.com/webinars, and it will be there for you as well. You can use the Q&A tab on your webinar console at any time during the presentation to submit questions. We'll try to get to as many as possible at the end. Please also remember you can stick around at the end. We'll be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so make sure and stay tuned to see if you are a winner. All right, so with that, I am pleased to introduce to you today Asaf Yigal. He's the co-founder and VP of Product at Logs, and Matt Hines, the Director of Product Marketing. I'm going to turn my camera and my microphone off and let you guys take it away.
Thanks so much, Sharon. Really grateful to be here today on the Media Ops Network and excited about this program. Sharon noted off the top, we'd love to make it as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, comments along the way, please do enter it into the portal, and we'll be happy to get to those either as we go through today's presentation, or certainly we've left some time at the end for Q&A. So again, today's program is Best Practices, Scaling Observability for Modern Applications. Hopefully that's a topic that's near and dear to your heart if you've joined us today, and certainly we'll go into great detail in terms of what we feel that means and the important trends. Again, I'm Matt. I'm the Product Marketing Director here at Logs.io. I've been around IT marketing for a long time, and was a journalist before that. If you poke around on the DevOps.com site or Security Boulevard and the Media Ops Network, you might even find some things I wrote way back when, or various companies I represented. Really pleased to be joined by Asaf Yigal today, who's one of our co-founders and VP of Product at Logs.io. Asaf has a long history in engineering and building fantastic products. He's got a lot of great insight into this space and DevOps and software engineering in general. Thanks for joining us today, Asaf.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. So hi, everyone. My name is Asaf, and like Matt said, I'm an engineer at heart. I've been developing code for most of my life. Being a user of observability services, I'm one of the co-founders of Logs.io, and I'm also heading up the product organization here. So happy to be here, and thanks for having us.
And we'll try to move through this program quickly, right? We'd love to pack in as much information in as quick amount of time as we can. It's great to see everybody chiming in on the chat from all over the world, right? I see Italy, Canada, Spain, Kuwait. This is pretty cool, Ontario. So wonderful to have people around the globe tuning in. Our agenda for the day is it's 3 parts plus Q&A, right? We'll talk about some trends off the top around observability and what that really even means to people right now, how the industry is trending. And then we'll get to the meat of the program, which is really the best practices that we want to talk about today around scaling observability to help address applications and infrastructure within the cloud environment, which is, it's a huge trend. Everybody's dealing with it, and there's a lot of different factors to consider, and we'll touch on those in the best practices in off the top. We'll talk a little bit at the end about Logs.io and who we are and how we help address this from a platform perspective. And again, can't wait to see and look forward to see questions from you as we move throughout the program. So the current state of cloud observability, right? This is, a quick perusal of the headlines. If you put observability into Google News, you get a ton of hits, right? In the last couple of weeks alone, these headlines all jumped up, and you can see it's everything from, hey, what are best practices for people in the C-suite, right? That's pretty interesting to see that this is not just a technical consideration for people who are building applications and managing infrastructure. This is also a strategic piece for today's executives, business executives and software executives, all the way up to the CIO's office. And the whole notion of what does that really mean to the organization, whether it's about lessening the burden on IT and operations, right? How that helps drive change in the business. And, there's certainly a lot of activity going on in the industry, acquisitions, big names, funding, things like that. So Asaf, I'll start off by posing this question that we see in the middle of the screen. Why do you think cloud observability has become so relevant right now? I mean, obviously, there's just a ton of activity.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely we're seeing trends that the world is becoming more and more digital. So everything we do today is becoming digital. Companies compete with their ability to deliver superior service. That's actually driving their company's need to be agile and develop quicker. If you want to develop quicker, you need to have observability. As systems get more dispersed, more ephemeral, the need for observability is a must these days, where it didn't used to be this way, when there was like a monolithic service which you updated once a quarter, once a year. These days, when you update your software 50 to 100 times a day without having real-time observability, you don't know when things go wrong. So this is why we see it becoming such a big trend.
And in addition to the headlines, right, I think it's always interesting to check down with the quote-unquote experts from the world of analysts, right? And everybody's writing on this, so hopefully that validates that it's something that, they talk to practitioners a lot, so there's a need and growing requirement among their clients to acquire these capabilities and build processes around it. And I won't read all these quotes here. I think, you see some of the big logos, right, the Gartners and the Forresters of the world, and 451, who we think is locked in on this topic as well. Just a quick, touch on each of these points, right? Really, it's just that, certainly as cloud infrastructure and applications become more complex, right, there's a need for additional processes and capabilities, as Gartner notes. I like what Forrester is talking about here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Asaf, right, which is that as organizations are developing code, as they're building out applications and architecting their infrastructure, they're starting to look at it with an observability-driven notion, right? Like, we need to build things from the standpoint of using these techniques to maintain not just historic visibility into everything, but also predictive to get in front of bottlenecks before they impact customers. And then this last piece here is, I think, important, right, which talks about, and Asaf already talked about this a little bit. This is a business-driven need, right? If you're a retailer in Q4, you need to know when you're going to get a big hit against your applications and your infrastructure, as a result of sales or things like that. So it's actually becoming, increasingly important for this level of monitoring to tie into business objectives as well, Asaf. I know you're talking to customers about this all the time.
Definitely. So one of the things we see, and also a big trend, as development gets quicker and quicker, and people are iterating quicker around the development, the observability is becoming a big part of the development cycle. So it's no longer like, I'm going to develop my code, I'm going to push it to production, and then I'm going to define some dashboards, some alerts. Now, these days, people define these things as they develop, as part of the code. So when I'm uploading a new microservice, or when I'm updating my microservice, or when I'm setting up a new pod in my Kubernetes cluster, once it's set up, it's already registered itself with all the observability systems that I have for proper observability. I don't need to do anything, and it's part of the code. Nobody's want to spend time now setting it up manually afterwards, after effect, especially with the rate of development that's being going on these days.
And so it's worthwhile to touch base, right? We're talking about observability. I guess that a lot of you have joined us, know what that is, but it's worth just, again, touching base on what does it really mean, right? Because some might say that observability has become a bit of a buzzword. Certainly when we think about it from a standpoint of some pretty well-defined practices, across. You can see the definition. This is from a story on InfoWorld. It's a superset of monitoring with a really broad scope, and then also inclusive of highly detailed, data streams and information, but really encompassing three key elements, right, which are logs, metrics, and traces. And again, I won't read. I think if you're here, you probably know what a lot of these things are. The big picture takeaway here, Asaf, right, is you really have to have all of this, right? If you look at traditional monitoring, obviously, we even started log management, and we've expanded to a broader platform approach around observability in general. But practitioners are looking at traditional monitoring practices and saying, this isn't enough. We need to get predictive. We need to get more details, and certainly, as we'll talk about, address the complexity in the cloud environment.
Yeah. So one definition I really like about observability is that how can you determine the state of your service just by interpreting signals from outside or signals that are being emitted outside. And definitely the way we see it and the way we work with customers, the metrics, logs, and traces, they all provide a slightly different view of reality, and the ability to correlate all of them gives you the complete picture. So logs are really, really simple to collect, but they're really verbose and have a lot of information in them, and it's hard to track. Metrics are slightly more complicated to collect. You have to set up, you have to intentionally emit these metrics, but they give you a clearer view of reality. Traces today have the highest complexity of collecting them, because most of them require some code instrumentation, the impact on the way production is running, but they give you the most amount of information. So being able to merge these three aspects give you the full picture of reality, and you can assess how your service is running just by interpreting the signals that it's being emitted outside. Yeah, so part of the leading challenges of cloud native, I think Matt touched on it when we started, is that businesses these days, in order to stay competitive, they're required to be more and more agile. You're not going to run into a business these days that have like a waterfall type of development. They're all going through agile. They're all developing. They're all using CI/CD and releasing multiple times a day. As part of it, it's requiring to leverage some capabilities like a Docker and Kubernetes environment, obviously cloud environment, which it gives you the business agility, but it creates observability complexity. Because now data, all the services are ephemeral, they go up and down, they restart themselves, they upgrade themselves, they connect, they disconnect, and all of it is being done just by the code running. So the businesses become more agile, developers become quicker. This poses an observability challenge. If you don't collect it in real time, your likelihood of addressing a problem and knowing what's going on is literally zero these days. So this is why it's such an important thing, and this is why it poses such a high complexity of collecting all the information, interpreting it in real time.
And one of the things we'll talk about more today is also the open source approach to all of this, right? And how open source is uniquely positioned from the standpoint of some key projects out there that are also part of Logs.io's DNA, built on leading open source technologies, right? If you read the Gartner reports, they talk about Prometheus and OpenTelemetry as some of the, Telegraph, as some of the leading capabilities out there. So the influence of the open source community on this is being felt in a big way too. And we'll talk about this again. This is the section of this session that I think is hopefully the most instructive, right? Because these are best practices that we've developed, that we're seeing from our customers, and certainly from people that we work with in the industry, around not just implementing observability, but also scaling it, right? How do you address those issues of complexity that Asaf was just talking about within the context of your existing applications and infrastructure, right? Because this is no simple task. And the first element that we'll touch on, right, relates directly to data collection and correlation, right? We're talking about huge volumes of data, right? When you talk about today's cloud infrastructure, hybrid IT, the level of microservices and containerized services, it almost boggles the mind. And, in order to address this adeptly, right, you have to have the ability to digest a huge amount of data, bring it all together in a way that's really useful to help get the kind of conclusions that you need to get out in front of emerging bottlenecks and reduce mean time to repair. Asaf, when you're speaking with clients, with our peers in the industry, what do you think are the most important drivers today around this element of the challenge?
I think part of it is, I think there's twofold, and you mentioned one of them earlier is the open source, but one of them is creating consistency around data collection. You want to make sure that the data collection is being done in a lightweight. Again, this is all being promoted with open source data collector, whether it's OpenTelemetry and whether it's Fluentd, and all of it. If you look at a modern environment like Kubernetes, they come pre-installed and pre-configured to ship the data to all the open source collectors and connectivity. The other thing is you need to have an underlying data structure that can grow horizontally as you scale the business. and also be able to give you the ability to scale when there is a problem. Both logs and metrics have a tendency to become very verbose when there is a problem. We see trends of companies having 10x the amount of logs being shipped when there is a problem, because suddenly all of your services are reporting that there is a problem. You need to have something that can scale with you when you need it, and not say, hey, now I have to contact someone and I have to buy more capacity, and the world is a 24/7 and you need to be able to do it in a matter of minutes to scale it.
And one of the things I've learned since joining Logs.io, right, I hadn't fully realized the extent to which open source is really the core capability. The projects that are out there today reflect the fact that this is the only way that some of the leading companies out there from a DevOps and best practices standpoint have been able to scale their own approach to monitoring, right? A lot of these projects have spun out of companies like Netflix and SoundCloud, right? Because those are the capabilities that enable them to actually grow as quickly as they need to. And I always enjoy hearing you talk about that, Asaf. A big piece of it is obviously analysis, right? So once you get the right data into the system, right, into these processes, how do you apply the right methodology in terms of again, carrying out analysis that delivers meaningful results in a way that's also again, scalable from the standpoint of the sheer amount of data that's being handled and fast enough to help you get out ahead of problems before they occur. So that's, again, like a lot of different areas, that's where we get into our discussion of machine learning and AI these days. But analysis is really at the heart of it all, right? I mean, if you're not able to get meaningful results out of the data, it's really it's not going to give you the results that you need.
Right, and I think it's absolutely about the data analysis and using machine learning and AI to address it, but it's also the ability to correlate information between logs, metrics, and traces that would give you the accuracy of the alerting and notification that you want. Most organizations that we run with today and that we work with suffer from what's called the alert fatigue, and they ingest a lot of data. They don't monitor their systems properly because each basically pillar of the observability is being monitored separately. One way to do it, and this is part of our best practices, is to correlate a lot of it, to say the fact that my CPU is above 80% is not necessarily a problem because I am buying that CPU in order to work. But if I see at the same time an excess number of exceptions in the code, which is presented in the logs, and I see traces that take more than X amount of millisecond, now it's a problem. And what we're working with organizations is, how do you scale the data? How do you scale the analysis and the response in a way that's not going to overload you with noise that's going to make it hard for you to see what's going on? It is a big part of scaling, the ability to scale without scaling the level of alerting and the number of alerting and the load that you're experiencing.
Yeah, I feel like this is the era that we're living in right now in the information age, right? It's just, how do we apply machine learning and AI to really get the results needed to make the right decision at the right time, right? I spent some time in the user behavior analytics space in the world of security, and it's, how do you have the context to understand that alert is the right one to spend your time on? And it also relates to the availability of, human talent, right? Making sure that you have the intelligence of what are the actions that have been taken previously around particular alerts that mean that they're actually a big deal and need to be pursued. So, I think this is showing up pretty much everywhere in IT today. So this is an interesting one, right? And again, I know we're moving quickly. I'll encourage people to pop questions into the chat if you've got anything as a follow-on. Time and efficiency, and touching on that quickly around the kind of human talent issue. And we hear about this in organizations, not just about making sure that they have the right process, full stop, or technical processes, capabilities to enable their folks to do the best job possible, but it's also, again, making the most of people's time and doing that in a way that's efficient. And, from the standpoint of now within a lot of organizations, this being delivered from, a particular center of excellence, observability being delivered as, as a service to various elements of the organization, right? Making sure that each team, each element of the organization has precisely the right data and observability capabilities that they need. This is a big one for us in terms of go-to-market, but from a pure, best practices standpoint, Asaf, What do you see as the key takeaways here?
A few things that we see. One of them, and a key part of it, is around cost. We all know that observability system can be costly. An organization need a way to, first of all, control the amount of data that are being collected and the value that they get out of it, and also basically the cost of the system. It costs a lot of money to save petabytes and petabytes of data, no matter how you store it. You also want to be able to control the scale and the data that you have in order to create efficiency. So searching and scanning through tens of petabytes of data is both costly and time consuming. So you want to make sure that when you have a problem, you can search through it in a very quick manner, but also be able to reduce the cost and not spend too much money on maintaining such a platform.
And another point here, of course, is related to segregation and role-based access, right? The point I was touching on earlier, making sure that everybody has the right access to the correct data, then protecting it for a lot of different reasons, including compliance. So that's certainly something that we hear from clients about a lot as well. And then I think the last one we wanted to call out here today were the business challenges, right? And that goes back to some of those first comments. I think it came from 451 Group, where they talked about overriding business and technology strategies, right? Bringing those together and ensuring that the strategy, your observability strategy is tied in closely with your business strategy, right? You could pick a vertical, whether it's, in the financial services world, targeting those applications that are most critical to both the back end and delivery of critical services to customers, or, retail during Black Friday season and things like that, right? Really making sure that you understand how business drivers need to adapt with your observability strategy. What do you think when you talk to customers, Asaf? What do you think the current state is? Do you think most organizations are approaching this from a business perspective, or is that more of a long-term goal?
I think most organizations are starting to approach it. One key thing that we see as organizations scale is the need to create autonomy. Meaning that as an organization, when they go from 500 developers to 1,000, 2,000 developers, they want to maintain smaller group that can develop their own code in an autonomous way and also create observability in an autonomous way. It's really important to be able to segregate the data. You mentioned it before around the role-based access and the ability to give every development team all the tools that they need to be able to be autonomous in their development. It's a big factor in what we see of business agility to be able to create it. And this is kind of like things that we see.
We did have one question, Asaf, that I think would be interesting to touch on at this point, which is I'm not clear on the practical differences between observability and APM. Right? We've been using different processes that seem to fall into both camps. How would you differentiate between observability and APM?
It's a good question. I think APM refers mostly to the way things have been done before microservices and before the Docker and Kubernetes era. The ability to run a monolithic service and understand how processes go from the user down to the databases. These methods do not apply to a distributed system anymore. And in order to create a distributed system, you have to have a distributed tracing, and you have to have the monitoring, and you have to have the log analytics in order to understand what's going on. So I think it's an old word that's being used for a slightly different aspect of development.
Yeah, I think if you dig into Gartner's research, they cite 4 or 5 different areas of monitoring that all roll up into their definition of observability, and APM is one of those. So certainly relevant as we continue to expand the use case. So we will take some time here just to quickly familiarize with Logs.io. Again, we'd love to have questions about anything else we've touched on here. We're Observability Platform, cloud native, built on the leading open source capabilities out there on the market. We're delivered as a managed service, and you see down the side here, we have the 3 core pillars of observability that we've also already talked about. We also have a cloud SIEM, which is a Still in many cases, I think a different persona in terms of who's using the product, but we certainly do see growing interest around the DevSecOps approach. Asaf, again, I know you're a lifelong developer. Your passion for open source is clear to anybody who talks to you. What do you think it is that's most important to touch on in terms of how we differentiate as a platform? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your mindset when you and Tomer first started to develop this platform.
Yeah, definitely. So there are different layers of value that we provide. So I think when we talk to customer, the first thing that they all want to do is have a managed service. Nobody wants to build their own observability, because if you build your own observability, now you have to create observability that looks after the observability that you create. It's not like a single server that can run petabytes of data or tens of millions of data series or billions of traces in it. So first of all, being a managed service. The second thing is open source. Open source is key, and we see it throughout organizations. It is a strategic decision for most organizations. It's two different aspects to it. One of them is the lack of vendor lock-in. Nobody wants to be locked into a vendor anymore as they scale. And the other aspect of it is obviously cost and the ability to control the cost and the expense that you do. On top of it, on top of being a managed service with an open source, we provide value-add capabilities. And these come in two different aspects that organizations need. One of them is a lot of pre-made content. There are more than 200 different services that just AWS provide. No one has the knowledge of each one of them, how to monitor it, how to create dashboards for them, where to set the alerts, if they're working properly or not working properly. And this is just one cloud provider, not to mention all the technologies that are out there, whether it's Kafka or Redis or different components that organizations have today. The other aspect is AI and machine learning. So you want to make sure that as you scale and as we scale and as we support our customer, we give them the most amount of value and show insights to them based on what's going on in their environment and based on the analysis that we do. And this is kind of like how we built our service. It's 100% based on open source. We provide the same capabilities that you would get today with Elasticsearch and OpenSearch. It gives you the same capabilities you would get with Prometheus and Grafana. And it gives you the same capabilities that you would get with Jaeger or Zipkin or any other distributed tracing system. This is a key thing for us to be able to develop it.
And the sheer volume of organizations out there that are already using these capabilities, there's a strong chance. I know I'm sure we've got folks on the call today who are using these technologies as open source capabilities, but they're so prevalent, right? There's a good chance that somebody in your organization is already using them. And taking a managed service approach from the standpoint of being able to get the most out of the platform and those capabilities instead of spending time to scale and manage those, clearly a big part of our go-to-market and how we're helping customers today. Obviously our theme here today was addressing observability at scale. And, again, we do feel like that's a big advantage, and open source is a big piece of that, right? And certainly to be able to do it, to have a platform that's able to scale to the volumes necessary to work in today's environments, to be able to undertake the changing volume requirements driven by various business elements. We feel that there's some core tenets to this. This is basically what we call the 4 pillars of observability at scale, and it's some of the things that we touched on here today. No coincidence, right? And it's the need to have the full platform capability that's all encompassing across logs, metrics, and traces. Certainly, we've talked a lot about AI and analytics. Being able to cater to each individual constituency within your organization that's using this data, right, and having the right controls in place, and then obviously the pricing component as well. And this definitely reflects these best practices were and this at scale messaging was developed in direct relation to what we're hearing from our largest customers and our customers who are really most deeply ingrained with observability in general. Asaf, it's funny, this concept kind of came off of your desk. Why do you think it's so important to emphasize the at scale piece?
I think it's really important to emphasize the at scale piece because companies these days are growing at like a very rapid clip. We see most companies, a lot of them are growing at 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% year over year growth. And the ability to create the scale is really important. even for a company that's just starting out, the understanding of how they're going to get from where they are to where they're going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now, where they're going to be at a tremendous scale. I think like you touch on a bunch of things that we do. It's open source, 100% open source, which gives it all the benefits. It's 100% managed, like you don't need to work for it. We actually we make sure it's working. Enriched with AI and machine learning to give you a lot more value at what we do, and we support all of it at scale, offering it at the cost, which is a lower cost of ownership than just running it on your own.
Yeah, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about a customer, right? CME Group is it's an exchange, right? Anybody, you can imagine the data requirements, the speed and fidelity requirements within these environments. And this is a company that's adopted a couple different pieces of our platform, both the log management piece and also the Cloud SIEM. Interestingly, like I said, that's more emergent from a kind of broader use case perspective. And yeah, right, it's security and compliance and trying to bring together more siloed capabilities to ensure that they're able to carry out meantime response in a faster way and support their existing open source investments. Asaf, I think this use case is pretty reflective of what we're seeing across a lot of our customers around their desire to broaden their observability capabilities, and certainly those that are already using some of the open source projects that we've talked about.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, CME is a great partner, and I've seen great success there, being able to reduce their MTTR, which is the mean time to resolution, and MTTD, which is the mean time to detection, which is eventually what matters when you run a distributed system and when you run at a fast pace and agile. The other thing is the ability to reduce the TCO, the ability to do things in a more efficient way. It's a great customer of ours and a great success story.
Yeah, and so I know we've moved quickly. The idea was to get through as much of the program as quickly as possible. We know time is valuable. If you have any other questions, we'd love to hear them. I do have a couple more that have been entered into the chat. Asaf, here's one. We've been monitoring logs for a long time, but we just started with metrics and traces. What would your next steps be in approaching observability as a larger process?
So it's a good question. So obviously we've started out by Logan offering Elasticsearch, which is now OpenSearch as a cloud service, and then we've expanded it to a SIEM product. We've expanded it to a Prometheus. Once we saw Prometheus gaining like tremendous traction with the observability space, and obviously Jaeger, which is we're one of the contributors to Jaeger, open source by Uber, to be able to do distributed tracing. The next step for us will be to bring it all together and make sure that you have a unified platform that you can see in one view. As you look at your application, you would see everything related to it. You can see the business metrics, you can see the infrastructure level metrics, you can see the logs and the errors and exception, you can see the deployments that are being done on all the microservices that are part of this application. You can see the spans and the traces that are correlated to the business value, and you'll be able to see it all in one place, basically connecting the logging, the metrics, and the traces into one single observability view.
And I think this other question that we've got has been answered. We've talked a lot about open source, but I'll put it out there one more time just because it did come in here. And it's basically just asking, why is open source being touted as such a big deal here? There are obviously a lot of projects, as noted, but why should we continue down that path versus embrace a more traditional approach?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think most organizations we're working with have already been burned by one proprietary vendor. And by burning, means saying that it becomes very, very expensive, and now the change and the migration is becoming impossible, and they feel locked in, which is not a place where anyone wants to be at, or being this is the vendor. You use open source data collector.
Sorry, your audio just broke up for a second there, Asaf.
Oh, sorry. So you're using open source data collectors, you're using open source data storage, you're using open source user experience, which means that you can change it, you can swap it at any given point in time with zero cost. So this is a major aspect for our organization. The other thing is that open source, the value of the open source is being determined by the size of the community, the amount of people that contribute to OpenSearch, the amount of people that contribute to Prometheus, the amount of people that contribute to Grafana are defining the value of it, not the amount of people that organization A has managed to acquire or managed to employ. So the value and the velocity of development on the open source is much, much greater than any proprietary company that we see. Combine that with a lower cost of ownership because it's open source, because it's being built by people that with kind of like cost efficiency in mind, you do get the best of all worlds. Obviously, given the fact that these are mature product and are reliant and are being open sourced by huge organizations that rely on them on a day-to-day operation.
And so we're really grateful for everybody who spent some time with us here today. And I'll throw out one more opportunity for anybody to ask a question if they'd like while we're waiting. I'll point towards a couple different things that we're doing in terms of awareness, right? We've got a new TechStrong TV channel that's getting launched later this month on MediaOps on the Digital Anarchist platform. We're calling that Observability at Scale TV. So if you got some value out of today's program, I should think you'll hear some interesting things on there. We have a great open observability podcast. If you're interested in observability in general, if the open source piece is near and dear to your heart, we've got a lot of great content on there, great interaction with people involved in these products and other organizations that are contributing, everybody from smaller orgs up to the cloud providers themselves like AWS. And we're going to be publishing our annual DevOps Pulse survey. We're going to be in our 5th year this year, and we're trying to get as much response as ever to really figure out what's going on in terms of practitioners' current state and goals. So we'd love for you to participate in that. Again, that'll all be posted via MediaOps. If you're a DevOps.com reader, we'll be doing additional events to bring attention to those. So certainly happy if you would like to get involved and contribute. I think I put the cart before the horse there with the Q&A slide. As I'm not seeing any other questions, I think that's it. Asaf, thanks so much for joining us today. It's always great to hear you talk on these subjects. I know they're near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, there's a question here about how does OpenTelemetry benefit your clients? So, I mean, I'll take that. So OpenTelemetry creates kind of like consistency and the ability to not being vendor locked these days. So if you deploy OpenTelemetry data collection, which today supports tracing and support metric information, and we're working on contributing login information, if you know that tomorrow you want to work with someone else, then you don't need to change the data collection. You don't need to go to hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of images that you deploy, or clusters that you have, or your EC2 machine that you're using, or Azure devices that you're using, and change the way the data is being collected, because the data is just going to be collected in the exact same way that it used to when you worked with us or with another vendor. It's really, really important, and we're big contributors to OpenTelemetry to create consistency around data collection that's going to enable the freedom of organization to choose the right observability for them.
All right, I guess it's my turn. Thank you both so much for that. That's fantastic, and I hope folks take advantage of some of the additional resources that they mentioned. All right, so let's see. First of all, I need to remind you that the session has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, you'll be able to go back and watch it again. We'll send an email to you with instructions for accessing the webinar on demand, or as always, you can visit us at devops.com/webinars. It's there for you as well. All right, so we're going to take a minute and draw our winners for the Amazon gift card drawing. And those winners today are Eric T, Chinari S, Brenda D, and Alan J. Congratulations to all our winners. We will be sending you a separate email with instructions for claiming your gift card. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. And if you don't see it there, make sure and check your spam folders. All right. Well, thank you again so much to Asaf and And Matt, we really appreciate your time. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining us today. I am Sharon Florentine, signing off.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.